It's that time, the time that many of you have been asking me for a very long time. It's that 5,000 mile living with update for my GR86, and in this video we're going to cover everything from winter driving to what it was like for the last 5,000 miles, to fuel economy, to aftermarket support, to what this car is like to drive on the track, and how you should modify the car to get it to the track where it can perform somewhat safely. So first things first, fuel economy. So over the last 5,000 miles, I returned a complete trip average of 23.5 miles per gallon. That is a healthy mix of highway and county road driving. On the highway, if you are purely going to use this as a road trip machine, you're going to be lucky to return around 24 to 25 miles per gallon, doing about 80 miles an hour, which, as a reference point, the prior generation BRZ, or FRS, returned around 30 miles per gallon doing the same speeds. A modern Civic Si, a Elantra N, hell, even a new GTI will all return around 30 miles per gallon doing similar driving. And you have a relatively small fuel tank, you're going to look at a range between 250 to 270-ish miles, depending on how empty you like to run the car. From a reliability standpoint, the last 5,000 miles have been pretty easy. I've had no real problems other than a high-speed hood flutter. So when it is windy out or you're doing, say, above 75 miles an hour, the hood will flutter at highway speeds, which I've been told is normal, but it is nevertheless a little bit concerning. And I did early on suffer from a dash rattle, which went away once I deleted the fake engine noise, and that's the next thing I'm going to talk about. When you buy one of these cars, if you look on the forums, there's many ways apparently to delete fake engine noise. But the easiest way to do, and the way that I suggest, is when you purchase one of these vehicles, go to your dealer and tell them to hook up the car to a scan tool. If you're at a Toyota dealer, it'll be TextStream, and they in about 2 minutes can turn off the ASC control, which is the fake engine noise. It's essentially an augmented sound played through a speaker behind the center gauge cluster. I think it's terribly annoying, and in my car's case, due to its pitch, it actually caused the HVAC controls to rattle. This car, when you turn off fake engine noise, is not unlocking a great soundtrack. You're not welcomed by the sound of like an amazing Honda naturally aspirated motor. It's still a rattly 4-cylinder from Supra, but it is no longer annoying or offensive. And it's something that I would do in my own car. When you take this car out on the track, as we're going to talk about later in this video, and you go helmets on with the windows down and you turn off the buzzer for the shift light, you will often unfortunately hit the rev limiter because you essentially can't hear the car anymore. What about the rest of the vehicle? What about how do I get this thing ready for the track? What's the aftermarket support like? Well, currently we've been working with Counter Space Garage. They are an excellent set of fellows from California. Mike and David are the gentlemen I've been working with. And they actually offer a ton of technical support for their buyers. They actually help run a race series built around this car. They have basically filled in most of my questions. And long story short, the aftermarket is relatively new. While yes, a lot of these suspension components bolt directly onto this car, things like brake kits, at least for the GR86. Mind you, the knuckle design on the BRZ means the brakes don't carry over to that car. A lot of those bits and pieces carry over to this. At least currently, as of this video being shot, no one has cracked the ECU, so no one can tune this car. And if you can basically forget about force induction at this point. And most of the exhaust setups and header setups were not actually for this car. They are carryover from the prior generation vehicle, which means they don't necessarily work the best. But if you are deciding to take this car to the track, which I highly suggest you do, there are basically two things you need to do at a bare minimum: brake fluid and brake pads. I went with CP pads for the stock calipers from Counter Space Garage. They are a mix between a street and a track pad. The reason I picked those pads for this is I wanted to simulate what someone like you guys, the viewers, would probably be going through. The pads themselves, as we're about to talk about when we get to the track, do a pretty good job, and they are a good blend between a track pad. So yes, they dust. Yes, they make a little bit of noise, but they will hold up to extended sessions of lapping, at least under stock tires and stock power. The other thing is brake fluid. A bare minimum is something you need to do. This car did not come with high temp brake fluid, and you will absolutely annihilate the brakes, as we did in our original video, if you do extended lapping. So that's the bare minimum. It's easy to do. So with that, let's head to the track and talk to Mark, and also introduce Britt Casey, a pro driver at Autobahn who serves as one of their chief instructors and is someone we're going to be including in our basically build series of this car and many of our future track videos with our regular press cars to show you what a pro driver can do and compare that to what we can do, and it will also pull out some of the X factor of driver skill. So with that, let's head to Autobahn Country Club. So we made it to Autobahn Country Club with my GR86, and we're here to do some testing. As you can clearly hear, the track is hot. But more importantly, I'm here with Britt Casey, a pro race car driver and an instructor at Autobahn Country Club. But instead of me introducing him to you, let's have Britt. Britt, tell the boys and girls who you are and what you do.
Sure. Hi everyone, I'm Britt Casey Jr, if it matters. I'm the chief instructor of driver development here at Autobahn. My professional racing background is in sports car racing in IMSA Michelin Pilot Challenge. Previous to that was IMSA Continental Tire Sports Car Challenge. Most notably, I'm the inaugural IMSA TCR champion in Michelin Pilot Challenge. Previous to that, it was ST. Drove Mazda MX-5s, and then previous to that drove Spec Miata. So Spec Miata is one of the biggest series here at Autobahn, and that's where I came from, so definitely proud to say it. Cool to come back and work here as well. Definitely know the track well. And
you've basically been here your whole life since you were a kid, right?
Yes, yep. So 2008, that's when I first started here on the go-kart track, and then at age 13, I started racing Spec Miata, and it's kind of grown from there. So it's really cool to get back and you know, kind of train the new next generation of young Autobahn member, but the regular Autobahn member as well. So it's been super rewarding, and it's a blast.
So safe to say, Britt's probably faster than I will ever be around this track and faster than 99% of people watching. So when we're doing this series, I'm going to try to put this in reference. Mark isn't here today because he's at Red Lobster enjoying an Admiral's Feast, so it's just me, but Mark and I are consistently about the same speed around the track. When we did our original comparison test with the GR86, ND2 and S2000, he was a smidge faster in the GR86 and I was a smidge faster in the ND2, but we were talking about fractions of a second here. Britt, on the other hand, is consistently anywhere between 2 to 3 seconds a lap faster than both Mark and I. Anyway, enough about that. I'm just trying to walk you through the qualifications to show you best case scenario. You have a pro driver driving this car around and a mere mortal. So the car, as I talked about earlier, is mostly stock, and that's to show you what you can do with this car. You need to at least do pads and fluid if you plan on lapping this continuously. When we had the press car here on stock fluid and stock pads, it did not last the whole day. It's safe to say these CP pads and brake fluid are pretty decent, right?
No fade at all. Totally resistant to temperature change, got better with heat. The pedal never got soft, not once.
And that's exactly what you want when you're gonna start lapping a car. I'm not saying this will last like 24-hour endurance race,
sure,
but for a regular person, this is not a bad solution, correct?
Oh, it's the best solution, for sure.
So let's talk about, I guess, the really only thing we've done so far is stock wheels and tires, which are, on this car's case, because it's a premium, it's a set of 18s. They are Pilots, they're Pilot Sports, not Pilot Super Sports. They are a slightly aggressive summer tire, and our other option, which we put on this car, were a set of Apex wheels with 245/40/17 RS4s. Not the stickiest tire in the world. Yes, you could go faster, but they wear like iron, and more importantly, they're consistent for someone who's planning on continuously doing lapping. So, Britt, walk me through the dynamic differences.
Sure. So obviously the tire's wider, so that typically yields more grip, but when you start talking about the compound itself, it's definitely more of a track tire. The Pilot Sport, basically, you know, meant for the road. You could tell just by the tread design of the other tire that it's just going to yield more grip. So what happened was it's mostly twofold. Overall, you could roll more speed into the corner. Why is that? The car has more grip capability, so you could come off the brake pedal with a little bit more speed everywhere. It puts the power down a little bit better. Generally on the street tire, it's going to have a little more understeer, whereas it shifted to more of a neutral balance on the upgraded tire, more track tire, if you will. Also, there's less ABS intervention when you hit the brakes. So the tire typically has more G capability. It's going to hold more grip in a braking situation rather than a turning situation. It's kind of a trade-off when you build a tire, you know, lateral versus braking or longitudinal grip. On the brakes, the track tire had a lot less ABS happening. The tire was staying gripped up. wasn't trying to lock up, and the ABS in the car didn't have to react to it. So that essentially means you shortened your brake zone. It's more efficient on the brakes. Yeah, that was a significant change. I mean, it was
basically
night and day.
2 to 3 seconds, essentially, is what you're looking at. So if
Mm-hmm.
you are going to go out, you don't want to spend a lot of money, you don't have a lot of money to blow in your car, the fastest thing you can do to it is a set of wheels and tires. So ignoring the performance benefits of going to a sticker wheel and tire, and that should be pretty obvious to anyone watching this, how was the car? I know we talked off camera. It's not a particularly oversteery car. You can feel that it's light, but it has an inherent like understeer balance, correct?
Yep, I would say neutral to understeer at the limit. You know, driving at 75%, you're going to feel it being neutral. The first tires to squeal are going to be the fronts. You know, it's not going to snap oversteer on you mid corner, which is approachable and, you know, confidence inspiring. It also helps you get back to the gas a little bit sooner. And in general, an understeer car is easier to control. So. Do I prefer it myself from my perspective of looking for, you know, outright best lap time? No, I'd probably shift it more towards a neutral to oversteer balance for that. But for a single change, for it to go up so high in lap time right away, but still be drivable and not go to like an extreme limit that's going to scare you away during your first track day or, you know, any track day at a new track. I liked it. I thought it was a really good change, especially considering the amount of money it costs to just get a set of tires.
You're looking at worst case $3,000 for wheels and tires, but like say $2,000 and change.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully this long in-depth conversation has not put you entirely to sleep, but it should give you a good idea of what the car is currently like to drive. But with that, I'm going to pick up Mark from Red Lobster, and we're going to talk about what the car has been like to drive on the street so far.
You're gonna come home after working.
She's like, what the fuck? You don't ever do anything here.
Mark, you ready for some true naturally aspirated 4-cylinder music? Ooh! So it's taken me so long to film this 5,000 mile update. I now have 6,000 miles.
Wow.
Yeah, it's incredible. So, you have spent a lot of time in this car. I spent a lot of time in this car. We've driven it in winter. We've driven it on the track. Tell me about it.
I'm gonna tell you all about it. So I just got out of my S2000 on the way here, which I did not want to drive because it's 100 degrees out. And I don't have a working radio in there, so I'm sitting there listening to music out of my phone speaker. The thing is rattling everywhere. I got no place to put my condoms and my bottled waters and everything. And
your
I get
old
in
man
here.
pills for your long balls.
Right, yeah, my skin tightening creams. And, you know, I think to myself, I'm like, this car is probably one of the best in its price range for delivering something. Like, I have cup holders in the door. I have places to put things, and although there's things that annoy the hell out of me about ergonomics in here, I think this is a very, very, very usable rear-wheel drive fun car that doesn't break the bank. And obviously, during the time this video is made, we have a clear understanding it's very hard to get basically any car, any fun car.
So this is unattainium for right now.
Yeah, it's
but
sad.
hopefully in the future you can get one of these
Once
things.
the economy goes bust and everything's like, you know, everybody's broke.
We're fighting over mice.
Yeah, we're fighting over chewing the heads off of mice. You'll be able to find one of these, and when you can get one closer to sticker, other than the fuel economy, it delivers all the fun that you could possibly have. And other than, I mean, really, we're talking about 4 or 5 different cars. You have the Miata, which is the only other rear-wheel drive that competes with this in that price range. You have Supra. You have Z and Mustang. I guess.
Camaro.
Yeah, I don't know if they're going to kill off Camaro. But anyway, this is probably the most fun, the most practical, the easiest to live with. It's not crazy. It's not crazy intense fast, but it still delivers way more than the old car did without having to essentially mess with anything on here other than the bare basics of tires and brake pads.
So the 2 places, this car is better than the old car in pretty much every way except for 2 places. Steering
Yes.
and fuel economy. So walk me through steering. How is it different than the old car?
I don't know what they broke. I mean, I know that they changed the EPS on here. The design is different. So it's supposed to feel more natural, and by the byproduct is now it feels like every other car. And even with stickier tires, the only thing we haven't tested is doing more caster in the front. And if we did that, you might get a more increased, heavier steering feel, but I don't think it's going to fix it. So that's a negative. The other thing is these half-ass, like Lexus RC 350 turn signals they put on here, the digi turn signals that don't have a detent. So I'm constantly trying to click it in place. I just want to, it's so annoying.
Yes.
And you don't know it until you get in here and deal with it. And then other than that, Jack, you tell me what you don't like.
Fuel economy. So I shouldn't complain in a sports car, but we just did that somewhat affordable, let's call it hot compact car test. All of those vehicles other than the WRX got around 30 miles to the gallon. This car on the highway doing about 80 to 85 miles an hour gets worse or the same fuel economy as my C7 Grand Sport, a car with a 6.2 liter, weighs 700 pounds more, and produces like 3 times or double the horsepower and is 3 times the displacement. Yeah,
that's a big problem, and it is, especially compared to the old 2 liter that was in this car, which was just a garbage motor anyway from a performance perspective. But here, you know, if you have a 4-cylinder, you want some type of fuel economy. But would you trade off the fuel economy here for the fact that it's a way better engine and way more powerful without having to fuck with it?
Oh God, no. This is a much better engine in pretty much every conceivable way versus the old motor. As I talked about in the shop, though, the modification side of this engine is a giant unknown at this point. No one's cracked the ECU as of this video, so who knows how tunable this thing's going to be and all that other fun stuff. Let's talk about suspension. We drove and what this thing is like in the winter. Here's some shots of the undercarriage, just like the old car. Certain parts corrode, but it doesn't look like an old battleship yet underneath. And the dampers, as we kind of alluded to in the past, are way, way too stiff in the cold.
Yeah, well, they're cheap. You can tell that the first model year they put the shitty dampers in. They probably found, you know, on the shelf somewhere, and you can feel a cheap shock changes its character based on temperature. And it's not even about performance. It's just this car gets really stiff in the winter when the oil flow is not there in the shock, and it's a negative. You don't notice it in the summer, however. I think that it's pretty well tuned. It's a very comfortable car. I think it's pretty soft overall. I don't think it's overly firm in the summer, and it's something you can live with.
No, day to day, if you live in better weather, this is no problem. How was it actually drive in the snow, though, Mark?
Well, I didn't drive it in the snow. You did.
Oh, fair point.
And you had a half-ass summer tire or half-ass winter tires that were destroyed. I did drive it once, and let's just say it's typical rear-wheel drive stuff. It doesn't matter the power and the torque. This thing was, and when I drove it shortly, it was all over the place.
That's the most fun I've had in this car is in the winter, because I got to live my initial D fantasies and going sideways everywhere. Once the newer winter tires went on, though, it was perfect.
Yeah,
you and I have had Blizzaks on our old BRZ and FRS, and really there's no problems if you don't drive like an idiot, right?
No, it comes back down to what I said, is this is one of the most approachable, fun, enjoyable, practical rear-wheel drive cars that doesn't break the bank other than the Miata. And while the Miata now annihilates this thing in fuel economy, you can get 30, like 5 miles to the gallon if you're driving correctly all day long and still have a shitload of fun. But you lose all the practicality with that car. It's more of a toy. Whereas this, now you do have the trade-offs like any other car, but I think if you're on the fence about buying this and you don't have a ton of money to go up to that next level, and then even way past that, there's a lot of fun here that you can get in like a base level Cayman. It's not as fast, obviously, but that fun factor, that enjoyment factor, that driver factor is here, and that's why I really love this.
Yeah, and the interior space, again, if you are going to use this every single day, it's surprisingly usable. I could fit 4 sets of tires / wheels in the back of this car with no problems. I could get all the camera gear over there for a shoot. Really, other than the head unit having Subaru infotainment problems where it crashes all the time, and I don't have your problem, but you have a problem with this.
I sit close to the wheel, so I constantly, my elbow's always on the release for the armrest, for the storage thing. It's always popping open, so that's really annoying. But this is little tiny things that are going to annoy certain people, and it's not going to affect others. The overall consensus of this car for me is it shows you, when you really think about it, right, you can make a purpose-built sports car that still is usable every day. And I get in, like today when I drove the S2000, 100 degrees out, and I'm sitting here thinking I would 100% rather be in this, because it feels like a regular car for the most part until I start driving it like crazy, and I'm still having a lot of fun, and that speaks volumes to why you buy this.
So Mark, I can't wait for us to start modifying this in the next video. video and watch me ruin this car or make it better.
I'll watch you modify it. I'm gonna bow out of that one.
You're gonna sit there, eat your Twinkies while I'm sweating like a monkey?
I'm like, dude, great idea. Let me know how that goes.
I know that was a lot, and this video was very long. And in the next video, we're gonna be covering how to really modify this car to get the most out of it. We are not a modification channel, but we are trying to show you what you can do with this car and whether or not it improves the day-to-day usability and weekend experience of driving this thing on the track. We'll be putting suspension on this car. We'll be working with O-Leans. Yes, there are more track-tuned dampers, but we've used them in the past and we've had good luck with them. We'll be using an Essex big brake kit. We've worked with Jeff in the past from Essex. They're a great organization. They offer a ton of technical support and they really know what they're doing. And we'll be working with Counterspace Garage. These guys run a race series based around the 86 and they are an engineering first organization. I have a lot of trust in these guys. So let me walk you through once again or wrap up what we did in this video. I went with Apex wheels. They're plus 42 17x9 Arc 8 wheels. I've used Apex in the past on my own personal vehicles. I put their wheels on my Mustang, I put their wheels on my Corvette. And the reason for it, they put a lot of effort into the wheels, making sure they're actually engineered and they hold up to track abuse. They also have the philosophy that wheels are sadly sort of a consumable item. So if you do beat the hell out of these wheels, they'll either stand by them or help you buy your next set at a discounted cost. We went with a set of hand-cooked tires, RS4s and 245/4017s. By doing that alone and combining them with the wider wheels and tires, we netted 2 seconds a lap, which is a big deal for a relatively low-cost option. If you went with a even stickier tire, like a set of RE71Rs, you could go even faster. And then for brakes, I used Counterspace Garage CP pads. They're not the most aggressive pad formulation, they're a good mix, but they can show you what you can do with your base set of rotors. And I also went with modal brake fluid. Is there better brake fluid out there? Maybe, but it's what we used. So anyway, thanks for watching. I hope to see you soon.